welcome our small audience here today, and also want to welcome any folks that might be watching later, because we will leave this up for later viewing. My name is Jeremy Elledge, and I'm the head of New View Healing Solutions, and I'm as always proud to be here representing our organization and our field, and here to try to share with you some a little bit of what I've learned, and try to contribute to the good things that you guys are out there knowing and doing. So as always, I like to kind of update you guys on the organization first, but just to clarify and to go in order, there will be a PowerPoint available, and anyone that would like a copy of today's presentation can certainly email us, and we will be glad to shoot that on over to you. info@newviewhealingsolutions.org. So feel free, because some people have said maybe at times if I make too many bullets on the slides, sometimes they get kind of small and hard to read. So anyway, but the name of today's presentation is Healing the Warrior: Emotionally Intelligent Approaches to Your Strength. And so I'll update you guys on what we're doing. As you know, most of you who know us now know that we provide continuing education for mental health professionals. We take a lot of pride in that. We want to do more than just help people meet legal mandates, because we all have to attend training and check the boxes and meet those mandates. But we also want to make training that's real, that's accessible, that's affordable, and that helps us help people. And so we're still providing continuing education for mental health professionals. But something I've been telling you guys about is that we do offer free training for all school districts in Oklahoma and all police departments in Oklahoma. And like I've been getting to update you on, a few are actually taking us up on that. So we got back recently from Hobart, Oklahoma, where if you're local, you say Hobart. Because if you say Hobart, they know you're from out of town. But we did a good training for the mental health professionals and police officers in that area, and we're going to be going to Sayre, Oklahoma, and to Altus, Oklahoma in the coming months. So really looking forward to coming and meeting and working with you guys and seeing some of our old friends, because what you do is vital. The work that we do is vital. And so, there's a lot of problems in the world. And so I think as caring professionals, mental health professionals, we acknowledge that, and we come to work every day to give something, to do something, to give of ourselves. And so I thank you guys for your something. As you know, I work for the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, and I love my role there, but I wanted to do more, because the world seems to need more. And so I had something to give, and so New View Healing Solutions, this is my something. And so I thank you guys for supporting and participating, because it supports our mission. And those that are getting their continuing education with us are supporting us to go to Altus, and to go to Sayre, and to Hobart, and to places that need to know about trauma. These guys are excited to learn and to know, and so we're excited to go there, because understanding trauma, it is real, it's necessary, it's something that a lot of areas that we don't totally get this yet, and I feel like I'm still just learning, but I'm glad to share what I've learned. So thank you guys, and so we'll just jump right into the presentation, right, Travis? So I want to thank my ace, and Travis here, he's helping out today, and I couldn't get these lovely productions done without him. And if there's any cool special effects or movie clips or graphics, we have him to thank for that. So, but healing the warrior, people have said that's kind of an odd, title for the workshop or whatever. And so I've been thinking a lot about it. Some of this presentation does lean towards thinking about treating men, but also this deals as much with the ladies as well, because a lot of us are warriors. there's a warrior in all of us, I think. And so, so anyway, so I just wanted to tell you guys, you know, try to clarify why we're having this title, because somewhere along the line, there's developed this notion that being tough or strong means you can't be intelligent or sensitive or in touch with your emotions. And so I think that that's a very harmful myth, and I believe that a lot of people are being harmed by their pursuit of this perception of what it means to be strong and what it means to reject vulnerability and weakness. And so anyway, we're going to talk about how we can heal our warrior and how we can apply our strength in ways that are beneficial to ourselves, our families, and our communities. So one of the things that I've often pointed out is, and most of you guys probably know, war veterans were the first population that we recognized trauma in. And so guys, you know, mostly men, went to war, and so they struggled oftentimes as a result of the brutality and fear and harm and danger and injury that they would experience at war, understandably. And so later on we started to realize that other populations experienced trauma as well. And so women and children also have trauma, different populations of people, but it wasn't something that we always talked about. And so, you know, a lot of folks are not familiar, but the first case of child abuse was prosecuted under animal protection law. We protected, you know, animals, livestock, before we protected children. And so, and we actually had legal precedent that said, by the rule of thumb, you could beat your wife, you know, as long as you did it with something that was not wider than your thumb, because you didn't want to cause too much harm. So when you think about that, well, it causes me to kind of question, and I think it's good for us to have some discussion, but, you know, online or, you know, just whenever. Why is it that it was okay to talk about war trauma? A lot of men, you know, coming home from war didn't want to talk about it, but it was an acknowledged type of trauma. And why do you think we were so apprehensive to acknowledge trauma in other populations, typically children, typically women, because, and I'll let you guys, you know, kind of think and, you know, think about why one trauma was okay to acknowledge, and then it took us some time to want to acknowledge some of these other traumas. Because, well, a lot of it was because, you know, well, we can, you know, have our different answers, but, you know, this was family trauma, you know. And so family trauma comes with a certain stigma and shame, you know, to be harmed within your family, to go off and to serve your country and to serve honorably and to be harmed by that is something that's noble, you know. And so, both of them involve violence. But one is in a much more acceptable form of violence, obviously, serving, you know, country and military, as opposed to, you know, going and hurting your family. And so we didn't talk about that kind of harm, but it was happening. And so, but thinking about, though, how we encourage, you know, the battle, the manliness, the noble service, you know, because these are all necessary things when our countries needs, you know, military service. But what does this do for our views on masculinity? So I'll kind of leave you to think about that. So I've often talked about trauma as a real and measurable injury. And so, you know, it is measurable. We can look at someone's brain, we can scan their heart, their nervous system, their breathing, different processes, and notice that trauma is a measurable injury. And so many of us are walking around with active injuries that people don't recognize because, again, we don't walk around with brain scanners and heart monitors on. And so when we act out, when people do bad things, you know, quote, bad behaviors, they're often judged, punished, and criticized. But the important thing to note is there's a lot of reactivity. There's a lot of, I think, wounded warriors, both men and women alike, who are walking around with one of these brains. You'll notice one brain has much more development and activity in the limbic and nervous system regions. And so, again, our brain is use dependent. So when we have too much activity, too much activation of nervous system, then it grows. It's like a muscle, and too much activity leads to too much development, and then it becomes overactive. And so that part of our brain wants to work when it's not necessarily time to work. That's what causes us to experience the hypervigilance and the hypersensitivity. And in our society today, we do see a lot of injured people reacting to injured people reacting to injured people reacting, and it's leading to just a lot of escalation of social issues and problems, and certainly for kids and families, that's what we care a lot about. And so instinctive aggression, you know, I think sometimes we deny the fact that human beings were a violent species. That's in our origins. And so in ancient times, humanity, you know, being a human involved necessary violence. So that probably instilled a lot of our instincts to be violent. And so we were always doing something really physical that involved some level of aggression, even if it was just digging and chopping and swinging. But we were doing things like farming and hunting and defending and fighting. And so, again, daily life often involved these activities, so it created some instincts within us. And so there was certainly, we know, a lot of tribalism. And so tribalism, we know in ancient times meant, you know, tribes, we stuck to our own, and people that looked different than us instilled fear and reactivity, because people who look different than you may mean you harm or danger. And so there are natural differences between men and women in our bodies. You know, there are some very obvious ones, but bone structure in particular, in the face and in some of the large bones of the body, and as well as the muscles, there is a difference in bone structure and muscle density and different things. And so this does create some physical power dynamics difference. And then also we do see that throughout history, you know, being violent meant power, you know, and it also meant safety, you know, because if you were able to be strong and violent, then you were able to have more power, and that of course motivated a lot of people. And then to be okay, to be safe, to defend yourselves and your family, your tribe from, you know, potential danger. And so, again, this instilled a lot of our instincts for aggression, and we, I think, have a lot of lingering you know, instincts that we don't have much to do with, because, you know, the human stress response does this. What does this instill in us? What are those things they taught us in psychology, the 3 F's: fight, flight, or freeze? And so all of those things required, well, 2 of 3 of those things involved a lot of energy and aggression, you know, a lot of exertion and big movements. And so in this day and age, it's not appropriate to fight or run away in most interpersonal issues. The things that cause us stress and reactivity today are typically not things that involve battle danger and predators trying to eat us, but our body still requires an outlet. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about how we can be cognitive, how we can be aware of our instincts, where they come from, of our injuries, and where, you know, we may have developed some of our aggressive tendencies, and so we can really apply our, you know, our good stuff for good. Again, going back to the violent origins, I think it's important for us to understand how we got here. And so us guys are, you know, what are some of the things that they say about men, you know, what we're not supposed to do? We're not supposed to cry, you know, we're not supposed to show emotion, you know, we don't talk about it, you know. Those are some of those stoic, you know, time-honored traditions that are handed down from generation to generation. Now, we're becoming a more emotionally intelligent species, I think in some ways. We know more. But I think, again, we're also a more injured species these days, and so we're also more reactive. But sometimes men do perform to the expectation, to the role. You know, when there's danger outside, you don't send mom usually out there, you send dad. You know, and so a lot of times I think we, you know, push a lot of men into the role of, well, I'm supposed to be the, you know, beat on the chest and tough guy kind of role. So another thing that we've seen in ancient times on up through, you know, I think a current regression with racism. You know, it stemmed from tribalism, like we mentioned. You know, at one point it made a lot of sense to fear people who were different. Nowadays, it doesn't make as much sense. But this is one of the reasons why people have fought, is because of fear of difference or fear for, you know, for life and limb. So that's one of the reasons that I think that we have some instinctive fighting. We also see many marginalized groups. We see women, you know, and a lot of different groups that fight amongst one another. A lot of times when we're injured, we see somebody hurt a family, and then they go away, and then that family is left to be hurt with one another. And so, but many marginalized groups that have been made to matter less in our society, whether it's kids, women, or different races or groups of people, they're often injured and then left to be injured with one another. So we see this in many communities where that are underserved, under-resourced, and of course, that's systemic racism. A lot of people wanted to see certain groups fail, and so when contained in certain communities, there was going to be violence, there was going to be crime, there was going to be poverty, because any species of human, animal, whatever, anything that doesn't have enough is going to cause struggle and dysfunction. So in modern culture, I think that we're being violent for all kinds of different reasons. I think that we're fighting about everything, and we're really fighting about nothing, because we see people fighting over Christmas presents. We see people fighting in traffic. We see people, you know, hurting one another and going to jail and being dead because of reactivity. Things that when cooler heads, you know, reflect on the situation, it wasn't something that was worth going to blows over. So we've got to understand, one of the things that I often talk about is something called identify, challenge, and change. We have to understand how we came to be the way that we are and embrace the parts of ourselves that we like, and then be able to challenge and change those aspects of ourselves that are malleable, because we do have some say in our own development. You know, a lot of people have, I've heard somebody say once, that's just what I do when I get mad, or that's just what I do when my mood acts up, or whatever. And so they've recognized, they've identified, but they didn't get to the challenging and changing part. So I like to use different mediums to try to help illustrate points, and maybe even have a little bit of fun, because nothing said that all clinical training needs to be stone cold, bore you out of your chair until you're yawning with water raining down your face. So anyway, enjoy this video clip that I hope works, and it will definitely work for the recorded version when he edits it in, but we're going to try to put it in for our live audience today as well.
Surprise! Help! What the hell's the matter with you?
Pacheco back to pass. Stealing pressure from freshman. Looking for his All-American John DeRosa, the wide receiver. Got it wide open in the middle of the field. Big rush. Oh.
Who's winning the match? State. I think I'm getting the black lung, Bob. It's not very well ventilated down there.
For Christ's sake, Derek, you've been down there one day. Talk to me in 30 years.
Moisture is the essence of wetness. And wetness is the essence of beauty.
Why do you have to come back to this damn town?
Wanted to make a new life for myself. I'm sorry I was born with this perfect bone structure, that my hair looks better done up with gel and mousse than hidden under a stupid hat with a light on it. All I ever wanted to do was make you proud of me, Pop.
With what? Your male modeling? Prancing around in your underwear with your wiener hanging out for everyone to see? You're dead to me, boy. You're more dead to me than your dead mother. I just thank the Lord she didn't live to see her son as a mermaid.
Merman. Merman!
All right. So again, that's silly. It's a silly movie clip from Zoolander, and again, I think we're seeing a couple of hyper-exaggerated extremes, of the ultra-sensitive, person. But then, you had the tough guys watching football, and they'd been in the coal mine, and so. Again, some extremes, for exaggerated, humor, I guess. Yeah, so I think it's important to think about where we get our concepts of strength, and certainly for us men, where we get our concept of masculinity, because the term masculinity are tendencies and traits that are characteristic of male. So whether you're a male clinician yourself, or whether you're treating a lot of males and their issues, I think it's helpful for us to look at where we learn some of our man stuff and what qualifies. What qualifies for masculinity, because again, does it require the black lung? Because for some, if we're not embracing the traditional tough guy roles, if we're not ready to fight and, big trucks and guns and, big hats, I don't know, what is it that qualifies us to be tough or strong? And I think it's important for us to kind of grapple with that a little bit, because again, when we're doing this thing I call identify, challenge, and change, we get caught up in our reactions. We are programmed so much by our early foundational learning, our pre-logic learning. Our young brains are just constantly sucking up data. Just constantly sucking up data, and it can be, good data, bad data, beneficial data, dysfunctional data. And so that is the data that we have to access, and then this represents and creates our instincts. And so instincts are the things that we do without thinking. And so, but when we force ourselves to start to reflect on these things, we can embrace what, what makes sense. Because as men are, we're built to be strong. We're made to be strong, so that does serve a necessary function sometimes. But certainly, the violent tendencies that we're seeing are grossly overutilized. So we have to think about what the accepted norms are, for the way that we communicate and express or don't. The way that we cope. you know, are the roles that are acceptable for a strong person versus, you know, our jobs, our relationships. I remember there was, you know, somebody that asked me what I was going to college for. This was a pretty important person to me. Asked me, you know, I told them I was going to go for social work. Social work, isn't that for women? That's what I was told. And so, and that, you know, I had to clarify that it was for both men and women. There are more women in social work than men. But I wondered, though, you know, I was in my 20s at the time, and I wondered, as I, you know, went into my professional, you know, career later on, I've wondered, did that make me want to make sure that I was doing social work in a manly way? How did that affect me in the jobs that I chose and in the way that I did that job? So we have to think about a more intelligent application of our power. And so certainly, you know, I work with a lot of police officers. I work with, you know, prison guards, military servicemen, and certainly those guys know that there are times when you got to throw down. But it's also important that we recognize that our mind and our heart are our most powerful tools. And so we're not getting the best access of these things, and so we're going right to these things. And again, so many men have been shoved into the role and the expectation of it's time to be violent. You know, go off to war and be violent, and, you know, go off and hunt and be violent. Now come home and be you know, be calm. You know, be safe. You know, you see a lot of NFL football players, a violent sport. You know, one of the most violent sports in the world. You know, a lot of those guys, and I don't condone violence, but again, they're violent all day long, and then a lot of them are engaging in violence with their families. And it's not okay. It's not okay, but I think it's sometimes hard to turn it off sometimes when you have made violence so instinctive. And so I often told you guys, you know, a guy came into my office and he had a gun, and he wasn't threatening me with it, but he was being pretty menacing. And through your mind and heart and emotional intelligence and the way that we interacted, we were able to, you know, I was able to get the gun away from him before the police intervened because they were coming, and it would have been bad for him. So anyway, this is about an emotionally intelligent application of our strength. But as you guys know, one of our missions is to change Oklahoma ACEs, and I think it's, you know, everybody that is in this field, that's your mission too. I know that. So it's not like our special, you know, mission, but it's something that we take, you know, to heart very seriously. And so, but you guys know that the ACEs study, adverse childhood experiences, shows that the more trauma that you have in childhood, all kinds of problems go up for you throughout your life. You know, we know that maladaptive coping, goes up in adolescence. Injured kids doing injured things. We see more rates of substance use, problematic peer groups, and aggression. You know, because again, ACEs are family traumas. You know, we know that danger is out there in the world. You know, we know that there are, dangers out there, but it does a special kind of harm to us in our developmental years, in our safe places where we're supposed to be safe. And so this is a family kind of trauma. And so what it does in our programming of our instincts, in our pre-logic learning, what this does is it creates fight, flight, or freeze in early development. It causes a lot of hypervigilance and hyperreactivity, and it causes a familiarity, a dysfunctional and detrimental familiarity with, being hurt, by familiar people. That's what I said on the slide. It gets us used to being hurt, of and by familiar people. So anyway, I think I didn't say that right, but. When you're growing up in a home where there's a lot of ACEs, you're often adapting to violence. You know, you're adapting to unmet need. I often say, you know, when we're working with kids, no matter what the diagnosis is, what we're usually working on is trauma or chronic stress, you know, unmet emotional needs from their parents, you know, and from their families. And then also a lot of dysfunctional norms, detrimental familiarities. And when you're being injured a lot, and when you're not able to have help, so there's also a lot of suppression. And so this gets us used to handling our emotions in different ways, holding it in and letting it out in ways that are not beneficial to ourselves or, you know, our families or our communities. And so it's important for us to recognize also ACEs. I had to stick it in there because I think it's so relevant for how so many injured boys become injured men and injured little girls become injured women because they take the reins in their families and we parent injured. And we wife and we husband injured. And when we do that, like I said, injured people do injured things that further injure themselves, their families, and their communities. I think, you know, one of the things that we talk about in changing ACEs where you are, you know, I won't get off track too much about this, but any safe adult can help a child establish some resilience, get that high five and let them know that they're thinking about them and caring about them and going to be disappointed if they mess up, you know, because it's those kids that don't have anybody to care when they do those injured behaviors, because injured people do injured things, and a lot of those maladaptive coping mechanisms that were developed were injured people reacting to pain and trying not to feel their feelings. And so a lot of our kids are growing up with more to react to, and so they're having more hypervigilance and more reasons and trying not to feel their feelings, I guess. So I'm going to play you guys one other clip that I really like. I don't know if have you seen this, Travis?
No.
Okay, well, let's check it out, and maybe we'll go there sometime. Emotional intelligence, what do you think about? I mean, what does that term mean to you? Because I know we've got emotionally intelligent people in our audience. So I often ask, what does that term mean? So let's think about this for a second, because again, for someone who's not dealing in these clinical concepts and terms, this sounds kind of foreign, kind of, I don't know about that, kind of wishy-washy. So, but emotional intelligence means that we're going to be smarter about our feelings. We're going to be, you know, more aware of our brain and its processes, so we can be more active in choosing how they work. It's really important that we take an active role in how our brain works. Otherwise, we're just injured animals that are just reacting to reacting to reacting. So emotional intelligence, for these discussions with guys and gals, I like to remind, you know, there's all these different parts of our brain, but the parts that I like to remind, there's the limbic system, our emotional brain, and there's the cortex, our cerebral cortex, that's our smart brain. You know, this houses our intelligence and our decision making and our complex reasoning. And so we need this to triumph over emotional reactivity. We often experience that emotional tug of war. We often experience that knowing what we ought to do, but feeling a different way. And so, but when we are in the habit of checking in with our emotions, when we are in the habit of saying, how do I feel right now? What we're doing is using our cortex to examine or look at the limbic system and see what it's doing. And in that quick process, we become more aware of our own emotional state. And so, and to put it into words does something for us as well, because people don't feel in words. They feel in electrical impulses and neurochemical information. And so when we put words to it, we gain some awareness. And so we've all of a sudden become less reactive, and now we've kind of gotten in the driver's seat and we can decide, all right, this is how I feel, and this is what I want to do about it. In the book that I'm writing, I talk about these different emotional capacities that I put into 4 different categories. And the reason that I do that is to remind us that we have different feelings for a reason. You know, we have to recognize that feelings are there to actually serve us, to help us navigate and react to life, and to try to help ourselves. Now, a lot of people, based on the data that's gone into their early brain, a lot of people have learned to make things worse with their natural emotional capacities. So feelings are never wrong, but sometimes what people learn to do with those capacities is detrimental to their own, situation, to their own functioning, and certainly to those around them. So being emotionally intelligent means that we're going to be smarter about how we feel and why we feel that way, and we're going to have people checking in with that regularly. Because it's not about being overly sensitive. It's about helping ourselves not react. I say that all emotional capacities are there for an important reason, but it's also, regret is one of the worst ones. It's one of the ones that we seem to like the least. And so we can reduce and minimize and prevent a lot of regret because people often feel bad for how they reacted to their feelings, but a lot of people don't recognize emotions, the feeling, until it's already been felt and acted upon. And so we want to make people more emotionally intelligent so they can be in control of their own brain and their own capacities, so they can recognize when they're injured, because when we do experience too much of our own emotional response to pain, then it does harm us, and it does leave a lasting impression on our brain and on our body. And so we have to recognize that we do have emotional and social needs. Just like the guys that, they come home and they have their partner, and then they, hit them with all the information of their day and everything they've been thinking about or whatever. I think a lot of us can identify, for those of us, who haven't always had a lot of social supports. Those few, people that you do talk to, we can wear them out sometimes a little bit, can't we? So, and that's not, both men and women alike. We can wear out our supports. Sometimes we have to expand our bubble a little bit. But emotional intelligence means understanding our needs, recognizing our emotions, recognizing emotions and capacities and needs in others. Well, I call them human tail wags. Yeah, the cognitive cookies. My dogs, when they get have really emotionally excited, I've told you guys before, they start wagging their tails and they can knock stuff off of the coffee table, and they have a very simple brain that has a very simple emotional behavioral response, and so they're not able to usually manage that much differently. Now, human beings, when we have certain triggers, certain emotions, we have emotional and behavioral tail wags also. We knock stuff off the coffee table, sometimes metaphorically, with the way that we naturally or reactively, have our feelings and our behaviors. And so, but the great thing about being a human being is we have 16 billion neurons in our cerebral cortex. That's the biggest brain, pound for pound, in the universe. We have, of course, elephants and whales and, stuff. They have bigger brains, but so much of their time is spent feeding. We have little bodies, and so we can support that with calories, and then we get to think. We're the only species that thinks about thinking, so we're able to recognize our tendencies and our patterns, our triggers, and we can plan for those things. And so one of the great things is, the dog can't change his emotional behavioral response, but the human can. We're not, just doomed to just react the way we always did or the way we've been taught if that wasn't a beneficial, response. We get to have an ongoing influence in the way that our brain grows and develops, and that's important. Unless you had totally perfect experiences growing up, only healthy and wholesome experiences. If your cognitive cookie jar, only healthy cognitive cookies went in there. Because again, our young brains are constantly, soaking up the data that's around. And so many young brains, many of us didn't just have healthy, wholesome examples. We had some detrimental or dysfunctional examples as well. We have to be willing to identify those, recognize them when they're happening. Oh, I'm about to do that thing that I used to do, my tail wag. I'm going to catch myself before I do that thing, and I'm going to do something different. And over time, we can literally change our brain. We can give ourselves new neural pathways. And that's very, very hopeful. Really, really glad to know that we're not going to just be stuck with, necessarily negative instincts. But it does take a lot of practice, and the initial phases of changing bad habits are very challenging. And we've got to help people stay the fight. You know, we've got to help people stick with it and understand that the initial change is going to be very hard. It requires repetition and commitment and gritting your teeth and just, you know, pushing through. And literally what we're doing is rerouting our intentions, our focus, our energy, and eventually a neural pathway. And so we don't have to be stuck with the injured brain that we have, or the detrimental data that we may have, you know, may have soaked up. So that's what I tell kids and young people. You're still got a lot of memory bank there, and there's still room for more data. And the more data that goes in there, and the more we actively choose the new and healthy data, you're giving yourself new healthy instincts. So we're not just stuck with the bad habits that maybe were taught to us. So again, I pick on the guys a little bit because again, but I do pick it as a question because men are not less emotionally capable. You know, it's not that we lack in these capacities in our brain. Now, I do believe that, again, over time, many men, over generations, you know, generations and generations and generations, violence may be kind of in our DNA, but again, that was for hunting and defending and fighting as necessary in those early, more instinctive days. And so when we're injured or when we're reactive, you know, we have less access to our smart brain. And so that's one of the problems that I see in our society today, is the fact that we're all so injured. You know, we had COVID, and, you know, we had Trump. Yeah, that's right, I'll say it. We've had a lot of civil unrest, regression with racism. There's a lot of different things that are happening. And so we're a more injured society than ever before. There were the traditionally injured groups that were already there, and then you got a lot of other people that are reacting to other injuries. So, well, again, when the limbic system is very active, it makes our cerebral cortex be quiet. You know, it's part of the stress response, or the fear response, in fact. Now, when we're scared, you know, when we're typically fear, the root of that is, you know, fear for survival, you know, reacting for, you know, to be safe from danger. And when we have that, our brain speeds up. Our brain becomes very reactive, and it's only thinking in action. You know, it kind of shuts down that cerebral cortex. If we're running away from danger, you're not thinking about what your favorite show is or when it's going to come on. You know, you're only thinking in those reactive actions that's going to preserve your safety. You're going to fight or you're going to flight. And so, again, that's a good thing that our brain has for us, but if that's activated too often, then it harms us and it keeps acting. And again, that gives us less access to our prefrontal cerebral cortex. And that's key. That's, you know, part of the injury of trauma. You know, the word adaptation, I looked it up and I didn't like the definition, so I fixed it. So when I think about adaptation, I think about a developmental flexibility, you know, because as we see over time, many species have evolved and adapted to continue to function and exist in changing circumstances. So that's something that's necessary. But again, one thing that happens when we adapt to dysfunction, when we adapt to danger, we often develop some pretty negative ways of coping. And so, and a lot of these have been deeply instilled. You know, if you solved your worst problem with aggression, you know, then other problems are going to arise, and aggression maybe not was going to be the answer, but it was going to be the instinct. So I like the way I put that. But no. So anyway, understanding that we can adapt to being injured, and we can adapt to that rush of adrenaline, that cortisol, the production of these reactions in the body. Anger can feel pretty strong. Now, anger is usually, now when I first learned about this thing called the anger cycle, somebody was telling me that anger is a secondary emotion. It's usually fear or sadness, some vulnerability, and some threat to a value or something that means something to us.
you know. And so, and I thought about that. I know anger is your primary emotion, I thought to myself. But anyway, we can debate those kind of wordy words. But the reality is that physiologically speaking, anger produces a couple of different responses. I told the kids, this is your superhuman strengths coming out. When you're angry or experiencing your stress response, you have more energy and physical strength. And that's a real thing. That's physiologically measured. And another one is when you're really angry, you sometimes have more courage, or the part of your brain that has concern for consequence, it kind of shuts off. And so, and then another part of anger is a painkiller. It's a mild painkiller. So when we get into a fight, when we're punching, and fighting for our lives, or when we're throwing tantrums and throwing fits, we don't feel those blows or those, bruised fists and knuckles and broken bones as much until later, till we're calm. And so don't think for a second that people can't get addicted to those things. And I tell the kids, again, those are your superhuman powers, but, we have to be mindful of of how these reactions happen in the body, and we've got to actively choose to be the hero instead of the villain, because we can apply these strengths, for good, or we can let them run amok, certainly. There's been a lot of over-application of violence, because violence is necessary in very few situations nowadays, but back in the day that wasn't the case. The term toxic masculinity is a term that I've been hearing over the past few years, and I think as a male, there's a part of me, I'm just going to confess on camera, I just wanted to avoid this term. I just didn't care for it, toxic masculinity. There's a part of me said, what is that? And I said, well, then I broke it down, and then I even, what's the word? I broke down the definition. Toxic meaning poisonous or harmful, and masculinity, traits or tendencies attributed to maleness. And so, and then I started thinking about it. Are there harmful or toxic perceptions or beliefs or traditions about what it means to be male? Absolutely. Here the other day we saw Will Smith. That brother's having a hard time. I don't know what's going on with him. But we were all shocked to see him come onto the stage and slap Chris Farley. Not Chris Farley, Chris Rock. Both Saturday Night Live Chris's, but slapped Chris Rock. And he did this in chivalrous defense of his wife, who clearly was annoyed at the joke. But, it got me to kind of thinking about it. There's a lot of learned coping, and problem-solving skills. Again, Will Smith is a male. I don't mean to pick on him or whatever, but he was a little boy that taught, you fight back and you stick up for your woman, and nobody, we've all heard these things. We've all been influenced and affected by these, generation to generation traditions and norms. And so, and it got me to thinking, when certain things like that happen, I think that said as much about some emotional need that Will Smith was having as opposed to some necessary defense that his partner was requiring. Because if somebody's trying to harm our partner, by all means, it's time to throw down. But this seemed to serve some different emotional need for old Will. So hopefully he's gonna get it together. But toxic masculinity does have us, reacting based on insecurity sometimes, a perceived weakness or loss of power. It does have us reacting sometimes to territorialism. That's my woman, kind of talk. Now that's her own human being over there that y'all have a relationship with, and when she needs you, you come to that defense. But again, for some reason, I think Will needed people to to know that he was tough, or he needed to feel that he was tough. He was trying to convince somebody. And he didn't knock Chris down, so I don't think he convinced Chris. He surprised us all, though. So again, toxic masculinity, you know, and really, I want to expand that because I think there's a toxic perception of what it means to be strong. I know a lot of stoic and proud and strong ladies that are still holding a lot of those emotions in, that are suppressing a lot of needs because that's the strong thing to do. That's what their family expects them to do, you know, because to break down or to get support or to talk about feelings, you know, would be exposing some vulnerability. And again, that's toxic because one of the things that we know, emotions are chemical processes and electrical processes that point to need. And if you don't honor them, they get stronger and stronger and stronger, and then eventually they harm us. They do cause harm. They do cause a lasting impression on our brain and on our body. We see these with, you know, measures of trauma and chronic stress. They can make us physically sick. It can disrupt our bowels and our literal development. It can, you know, too much stress and unaddressed emotion can cause our body to prioritize for which development's okay. It can really disrupt a lot of things. And so it's really important for us to, I think, adjust, you know, our views on what it means to be strong, because strength is still, you know, much required for our functioning. You know, we've got to be strong, you know, but I think that we have to identify a challenge and change, you know, what it means to be strong sometimes. But we have to choose to reject those detrimental teachings, those detrimental lessons, instincts, the things that aren't benefiting us. You know, because to recognize the electrical impulses that are happening in our brain and the needs that those indicate, that's not weakness. You know, now that doesn't mean we have to grab a box of hankies and lay down on the floor and bawl about everything. I mean, but we have to let our body have its time to experience the feelings and the responses, to process them and to put them into words. You know, because evidence shows, you know, this lady, I can still remember my very first patient years ago. She would talk for as long as you let her. She was a little old lady and she was very isolated and had a lot of stress. And she'd always say, "Oh, thank you, I feel so much better." And I wondered how she felt better. How is that possible that she felt better just from talking? I was a brand new therapist and I was really pretty new to the neuroscience. But again, experiences are, you know, are stored in a certain part of our brain. That's data. And so now that data, experiential data, is stored in pictures and in videos and sounds. It's not in words coming across a screen like on your computer. And so, but when we put our experiences into words, we learn about our own data. We gain some perspective and some knowledge of our own experiences. And so, and evidence shows that we can reduce some of the stress and some of the physiological and emotional response that goes along with those feelings when we can process them verbally. And so, and that's, I think, verbally is, you know, what I think, you know, makes us so much very different, I think, than a lot of other species in nature, because we know that other species have trauma. We can see trauma in different species of animal, actually, but they don't have the ability to say, "Oh my God, this just happened to me. Can you believe and they don't have a friend to talk to." I mean, maybe they're doing some kind of processing, I don't know. But so the social emotional aspect of things is really, really key. And so one of the things I tell my note takers, this is a good note to take, but people have two key needs when they're in crisis, you know, and that's coping and connection. They need relief and they need people. You know, we need to find some release from the pain, and we need somebody to care. So anyway, again, I'm going to spare you guys a full-on lecture on self-care. But one of the things that we've got to do is get back to some of the basics, the forgotten fundamentals. So many people eat poorly. You know, and I'm not, you know, and this is not a knock against impoverished populations, but actively choosing to just eat poor, nourishment, not enough hydration, lacking sleep, is allowing our body to stay injured and to deny its necessary restorative processes, and then exercise. Again, we're physical beings. And so many of us have professional jobs that have us sitting down at desks a lot. Students are sitting all day in the classroom, you know, and so our bodies aren't meant for that. And so a physical life and just preserving our bodies involves some level of necessary exertion, but then also the stress response, reminding you that it's fight, flight, or freeze, supplying us with extra energy to burn. And without burning that, it becomes something else. It can turn into anxiety, generalized anxiety. It can exhaust our nervous system and become depression and fatigue. It can do a lot of different things. So diet, sleep, and exercise, and then also planning things to look forward to. Plan for your joy. Plan for your recreation. Times of being unproductive. For those of us that are working constantly and always feeling like we got to be on the go, sometimes just taking some time actually makes you more productive and helps you enjoy some of this thing called life. But this is one of the things, these are what I would call forgotten fundamentals. So many of us are not addressing these key needs and then wondering why we feel like crap. So don't wonder, and help clients and patients understand, and especially as we're injured, as we're hypervigilant, as there's additional cortisol and adrenaline that comes along with our stress and with our injuries, we've got to help people see the need for physical outlets that are appropriate. Because again, we can't fight or run away every time something stresses us out, but our body requires some level of exertion, some what I call energy equivalent. So I think everybody, males and females, should have a place where they can go and be noisy, because we have large vocal capacities and large physical capacities that we have to restrain, that we have to keep in check. We have to use our inside voices, and that's appropriate because around other people, loud sounds can trigger alarm or danger. Stress, or whatever. So we're not trying to trigger fear or reactivity among others. So I think it's important, whether it's a gym, whether it's for me, it's my garage. There got to be a place where you can be primal, where you, and there, for me, it's a place where there's not a lot of eyes and ears on. I can look the way I need to look, and I can sound the way I want to sound, and I can grunt, and I can growl, or I can do my best, funky dance, and I can be what I need to be. Because we were meant to raise our voices, we were meant to move our bodies, and so much of our life is containing us in a tight little box. And so I think it's really important my neighbors probably think I'm crazy when I got the music turned up. I'm going to sing loud, experiencing music in decibel, but being able to let yourself kind of do some things that are, honoring some of those instincts. Because, again, you may not have a tree to chop down. You may not have a field to plow. You may not have, so there's a lot of different things that you can do, though. A lot of people play racquetball or golf, or go to the batting cages. A lot of people are into gardening, and there's a lot of different things that we can do to find physical outlet that's appropriate, and that it really benefits us in so many ways. But we've got to allow for some of these primal outlets because, I really do observe it as a human need. And they've even done these things where people go out on the side of the hill and scream, like scream therapy or whatever. I don't know about all that, but I wonder if it was billable. But anyway, I just I want to encourage people to kind of get back to what it means to being human. I like to go on walks. People see me out there walking a lot in my neighborhood and around the complex where I work, because my body needs to move. And we get some of our best thinking done when we're taking in oxygen-rich, large oxygen, inhales. I can't talk now. So large breaths of oxygen, which oxygenates our blood, and then the heartbeat is pounding, and we're circulating oxygen-rich blood. So it's doing a lot of good things for us emotionally and cognitively. And so one of the things that I will say about these physical outlets, again, because exercise is something that's really important to me, so it's kind of a bias, but it's also, I think it's really, really something that's not just for me. It's something that we all need. And so, again, it's about that stress response, but we're also, a lot of us, treating anxiety, and we're treating depression. And so we can help people change their physiology through physical activity. So many people want change, but they want to sit down and, have somebody help them change it. And sometimes, we need someone to help. Sometimes we need a medication to help us. But sometimes we need to know how to pursue our own wellness. Sometimes we need to know what physical outlets will lead to emotional release and cognitive improvement. But it is true that when we exert our large muscle groups and really feel the burn, as they say, when we run or lift weights or do something that requires some real vigorous energy. When we do that, again, we're burning off cortisol and adrenaline, and we're also boosting certain things like dopamine and serotonin and other endorphins and neurotransmitters that help us feel good naturally. And that's so important, because a lot of us, have patients that are coming in wanting to feel better. And so, and a lot of them are feeling like a doctor or a pill is the answer. It's so empowering to help people get excited about activities that they can do, and then they can feel better, and then they achieve that for themselves. Well, I'm going to go over these last few slides, and I'll honor everybody's time. We're scheduled for 90 minutes today, and I'm going to try to be on target with that. But stress management and having a plan, this is part of how we identify, challenge, and change. We get people to recognizing their emotions, and when we're struggling emotionally, people have a need for relief. Helping people recognize that you need to take some action to feel better. I don't know the address to the local wishing well. So we want to feel better, right? We all agree and we nod. Yes, of course we do. We want to feel better, but we often don't do the thing, don't take action to help ourselves with that. So I say, a goal without action is just a wish. I like that. A goal without action is just a wish. We want to feel better, but we don't do nothing for it. So we have to help people have a plan for coping and, practicing that stress management plan, practicing our coping plan, and drilling it. This is one of the things that I think as therapists and clinicians we may forget. Drill the skill. Because just like our fire drills and tornado drills, we hope to never need them. We hope to never need to rely on a life-saving measure such as that. But we do plan them ahead of time so we know what to do when the stress hits. Because when we get strong emotions and stress, we forget what to do. We can't think well. We're not able to process information very well. So we've got to get people in the habit of changing how they handle their angry feelings, how they handle their worried feelings, how their feelings of being threatened or some perceived loss. We've got to get people out of their limbic system and into their cortex to make a decision, at least, about what that feeling or need is about. I'll go in. You guys are coping gurus and stress management masters. So I'm not going to, lecture you too long, but make sure that you do help people drill their skills in times when it's calm. People say, well, I'm not feeling bad now. I don't need to cope. Well, yeah, now's the time. Now's the time to practice those skills and to practice them and get them in your brain. Plant that seed so you know kind of what to do when you need it. So anyway, because a lot of you guys will certainly have patience, and we can all, list like all the coping skills that we never use, say those things that we can do this, but we don't. And so reminding people that, we've got to, pursue our own better feelings. Psychological education is what I'm all about, providing information to people that's empowering to them. I think the kind of old school way of doing things is we're the experts, you're the broken, you bring your wretched problems to us and we'll fix you because we're fancy. We got all the answers, we got letters behind our name, But what we've really got to do is share healing knowledge. Most people just need good information and encouragement, and a little bit of a challenge, And so when we can, help people recognize those needs, recognize when they're injured, recognize what their feelings are, and if we can help people forgive themselves for being injured, that's one of the things that I really stress as a part of psychological education with people who have been injured by trauma, because those people have likely developed maladaptive coping, bad behaviors, and they've been judged, they've been punished, they've been criticized, they've been made to feel bad about symptoms of an injury that usually wasn't their fault. And so when we can help them see, you're not bad, you're not weak, you're not crazy, you're not mental, everybody can be diagnosed with something. Everybody can be diagnosed with something. And so to help people recognize they're not bad, they are injured, and they're doing what normal human beings do when impacted by an injury, and that they've got to forgive themselves for things that wasn't their fault, because when we recover some of that self-esteem and say, I am okay, and I do deserve, and I didn't deserve those bad things, and the way I've come to feel, we can help people forgive themselves, and then they begin to recover, because recovery's hard. I've often said, overcoming big injuries and big challenges is hard. And so when we can overcome some of the stigma and the self-esteem of being injured, we can go a lot further with that. So psychological education is key, and that's what we're all about. Reminding people, I should have put the dog park thing around this one. But it is important to remind, when we're doing psychological education, reminding parents, moms and dads, that they need outlets, that they need support. And it can't be their kids. A lot of them say, oh yeah, my kid's great support. No, you're there for your kid. Your kid's not there for you. But it's important for us to remind them of those social needs. But I think that kind of goes without saying. We all have these 4 Ps, with potential, a need for productivity, a need to take pride in self and life and purpose, potential, productivity, pride and purpose. So, and I think, we have to learn to redirect our fight, because, there are many warriors and there's many battles to be fought. Metaphorical battles, battles for justice, battles for equality, battles for safety on behalf of all kids, because, we say that we believe in a society that protects all children. We don't. There's many battles that are to be fought. And so, but one of the things that I recognize is a lot of people are walking around unhappy and unfulfilled. So many people have potential they're not doing enough with. They're not being productive. They think they want to spend all their time on vacation and on YouTube, and then they're wondering why they're unhappy. And people have often not learned to take pride in health and appearance, and then to be proud and to notice when they do a good job and to tell themselves, I did a good job today. A lot of people didn't learn that. And so we can help people meet treatment needs, and by addressing these more complex emotional needs, we can help redirect the fight. Because a lot of people have those ancient instincts for battle, but we can battle for something good, and it doesn't have to be a violent battle. It doesn't have to be a bloody battle. It doesn't have to be a political battle. It just needs to be a battle on behalf of our own well-being, our own families, our own kids, our own communities. And so, but the 4 Ps, I see a lot of people getting better because they find their purpose. And when we decide what we're about, things that are important to us, and when we pursue those vigorously, then it's proven to extend our life and improve life satisfaction and improve the way we respond to stress and loss, which are inevitable in life. So anyway, Jeremy's 4 Ps, that's 9th chapter of my book, which will be out one of these days. It's hard to write and teach and work all the time, and so that's why I go ahead and teach you guys now. Again, just to recap, guys, identify, challenge, and change means we want to identify where we got our instincts and our norms, and where we got our concept of what it means to be strong, and be willing to challenge, these notions. Where do we get these notions? Yeah, there are times when we still got to throw down. But understanding that those are few, because a lot of people kind of give themselves permission to have an outburst, to verbally or explosively in some other way have an outburst as a means of getting some need met or getting people out of their way or, whatever. And so to recognize that violence still has a place, we have these instincts and these capacities, but they're overutilized. So this is just about choosing our strengths and harnessing our strengths and selectively and actively choosing what we do with our power, because we have a lot of power, human beings, and a lot of the people that I know, my brothers and sisters, my friends, my colleagues, we have a lot of power, but we want to choose our strengths and not be spoon-fed our strengths and be told what our roles are and when we're supposed to throw down and those sort of things. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for participating. We have a small live audience today, and I think the world of you guys, and I appreciate y'all for being here with us, and for our audience that may be watching, while they're eating popcorn, in their bathrobe at some weird time or whatever else. I thank you guys also for joining us for our shorter CEU. For this time around. Please do fill out, there's a little evaluation on our website that you should see there. It's quick and easy. We appreciate any feedback that makes us feel good about ourselves or that helps us know how we can get better, because we want to keep getting better and we want to keep growing with you guys and learning with you guys. So email us if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, info@newviewhealingsolutions.org. We also have a few more workshops coming up this spring, so we hope that you'll tune in for those or catch us on the recorded version. But as always, I like to say, don't let your obstacles become your excuses, and thanks again for tuning in.